She didn't take revenge with anger. She took it by becoming so valuable that the people who fired her had no choice but to depend on her. The Queen of Glass. The building stood like a mirror to the sky. 12 floors of glass, steel, and silent arrogance. Every morning, sunlight struck its surface and bounced back into the city as if to remind everyone who was in control. And she was. Her name was Marianne Vale. She didn't just own the building. She owned the people inside it, or at least, that's what she believed. Tenants whispered her name the way people talk about storms. Employees straightened their backs when she entered. Managers smiled too quickly. Lawyers returned her calls on the first ring. Marianne Vale had money, yes, but more than that, she had confidence sharpened into cruelty. She believed rules were for others. Contracts were suggestions. Courtesy was weakness. And she especially believed one thing. People below her should know their place. The woman she never noticed. On the third floor, tucked behind frosted glass and humming fluorescent lights, worked Elena Cross. Elena wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't important, at least not on paper. She managed facilities coordination, vendor schedules, maintenance logs, compliance paperwork. The kind of work no one praises but everyone panics about when it's missing. Marianne had seen Elena maybe twice. Once, as that woman near the copier. Once more, as someone who didn't move fast enough. That second time mattered. The day power spoke. It was a Tuesday when Marianne fired her. No warning. No discussion. No mistake. Just a sentence, sharp and casual, delivered in the lobby while others watched. You're inefficient. I don't tolerate inefficiency. Clear your desk. Elena didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She nodded once. And that, more than anything, annoyed Marianne. What Marianne didn't know. Marianne believed firing people ended stories. She never understood that sometimes it starts them. What she didn't know, what she couldn't see past her reflection in the glass walls, was this. Elena Cross had been quietly keeping the building together for 6 years. She knew. Every expired permit. Every undocumented workaround. Every unpaid vendor favor. Every corner where rules bent just enough to pass inspection. Not because she planned revenge. But because competent people remember details. And patient people remember everything. The first rule of real revenge. Elena didn't storm out. She didn't post. She didn't threaten. She went home, made tea, and opened a notebook. On the first page, she wrote one line. Never interrupt your enemy when they believe they've already won. Marianne Vale slept peacefully that night. After all, she still owned the building. The quiet exit. Elena cleared her desk in under 20 minutes. Not because there was little to pack, but because she had already learned, over years of invisible work, what mattered and what didn't. Personal items went into a small cardboard box. A plant that had survived 3 office relocations. A chipped mug with a faded logo. A notebook she never left behind. Everything else stayed exactly where it was. Because real exits are never dramatic. They are precise. No scene, no noise. People watched her from behind screens and half-open doors. Some felt sympathy. Some felt relief it wasn't them. Most felt nothing at all. Elena understood this better than anyone. In offices like this, emotions are temporary. Systems are permanent. She handed her access card to security, signed the termination form without reading it twice, and walked out of the building she had helped keep alive. The glass doors closed behind her with a soft hydraulic sigh. Oh, no alarms. No applause. No consequences. Yet. What she took with her. Marianne believed power lived in ownership. Elena knew power lived in knowledge. During her years on the 3rd floor, Elena had never broken a rule, but she had memorized the places where rules were bent. She knew which inspections were rushed. Which vendors hadn't been paid on time. Which compliance forms were temporarily extended, again and again. Which emergency procedures existed only on paper. And most importantly, she knew why. Because Marianne Vale hated delays more than risk. She hated inconvenience more than legality. And people like that always leave fingerprints. The waiting period. For 2 weeks, Elena did nothing. No calls. No emails. No applications. She let the building adjust to her absence. At first, nothing changed. Lights still turned on. Elevators still moved. Invoices still went out. Marianne felt validated. See? She told her assistant. Dead weight. Replaceable. That belief settled in comfortably. Too comfortably. Small omissions. By the 3rd week, small things began to slip. A vendor called asking for confirmation Elena used to handle automatically. A permit renewal date passed without reminder. A maintenance issue lingered because no one knew which workaround Elena had quietly arranged years ago. And nothing serious. And nothing urgent. Just friction. The kind that slows systems by millimeters at a time. Marianne noticed the irritation, but blamed incompetence, not absence. As she always did. The first file. One evening, Elena sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open. She didn't open company emails. She didn't access restricted systems. She opened public records. Compliance databases. Inspection logs. Vendor registries. She compared them, not with anger, but with calm curiosity. Patterns emerged. Not crimes. Not scandals. Just exposure. And exposure, she knew, was enough. A name reappears. Across the city, in a consulting firm that specialized in operational audits, a junior partner scanned a resume and paused. Elena Cross. Facilities coordination. 6 years. Building operations. He smiled. They were understaffed. And overqualified calm was rare. He made the call. Back to the glass building. Marianne Vale stood in the elevator weeks later, tapping her phone impatiently. Expenses were up. Delays were annoying. People were suddenly asking too many questions. She felt something unfamiliar. Not fear. Not yet. Just the faint discomfort of a machine that had lost a silent, essential part. The elevator doors opened. The building still belonged to her. But somewhere else, someone who understood it better was preparing to walk back in. Not as an employee. But as something far more dangerous. The threads begin to pull. Elena didn't rush back toward the building. That was the difference between anger and strategy. Anger runs straight at the problem. Strategy circles it quietly. A different door. The consulting firm didn't look impressive. No glass tower. No marble floors. Just clean desks, sharp minds, and one rule written on a whiteboard near the entrance. We don't guess. We verify. Elena fit perfectly. Her title was simple, operations analyst. Her real role was more precise. She translated chaos into clarity. What consultants see that owners ignore. In her first week, Elena reviewed case studies. One file caught her attention immediately. Property name, Vale Tower. Owner, Marianne Vale. Audit type, risk prevention review, pending request. Elena didn't smile. She didn't react at all. She only noted the irony. The building had requested an audit months earlier, but postponed it repeatedly due to scheduling conflicts. Marianne hated outsiders looking too closely. Professional distance. Elena informed her manager the moment she saw the file. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. Just facts. I worked there previously. If there's a conflict, I'll step aside. Her manager shook his head. That's not a conflict. That's context. And context, in consulting, is leverage. The first pull. Elena didn't expose anything. She didn't accuse. She asked questions. Polite ones. Documented ones. Questions that demanded written answers. Why was this permit extended without inspection? Why was this vendor listed under a different classification? Why did 3 emergency protocols share identical timestamps? Nothing illegal on its own. But together, they formed a pattern of carelessness. Inside the building, Marianne began receiving emails she didn't like. Subject lines were calm. Language was neutral. But the subtext was dangerous. For clarification. For verification. For documentation purposes. She snapped at her assistant. Why are they digging now? The assistant hesitated. They say it's routine. A routine had never scared Marianne before. But this felt different. The absence becomes visible. Managers started realizing how much Elena had quietly done. Not because someone praised her, but because no one else could replicate her systems. Old spreadsheets conflicted. Vendor relationships felt brittle. Timelines overlapped without explanation. One manager said it out loud in a meeting. Who handled this before? Silence answered. The consultant who didn't blink. When Elena finally entered Vale Tower again, she wore a visitor badge. A different color. Different authority. As she walked the halls calmly, greeting people who didn't recognize her, or did, and looked twice. Marianne saw her through a glass partition. For a moment, she didn't place the face. Then she did. Her expression tightened. Elena nodded once. Not in submission. Not in defiance. In professional acknowledgement. Power shifts are quiet. Marianne wanted to say something. But what? You can't be here? You work for me? You were fired? None of it applied anymore. Because Elena wasn't inside the system. She was examining it. The report begins writing itself. Back at the firm, Elena typed late into the evening. Not opinions. Not judgments. Just facts aligned correctly. Facts don't shout. They corner. When walls start whispering. Buildings don't betray people. Records do. The email that changed everything. The subject line was harmless. Preliminary findings, Vale Tower. Marianne opened it while standing by the window of her penthouse office, coffee in hand, city spread beneath her like proof of success. She skimmed. Then reread. Then sat down. The report didn't accuse. It didn't threaten. It didn't dramatize. It documented. And documentation is dangerous because it doesn't argue, it waits. What the report quietly revealed. Maintenance schedules signed off but never executed. Emergency drills recorded but not conducted. Vendor contracts renewed without performance reviews. Insurance clauses technically valid, practically void. Each point alone was survivable. Together, they painted a picture Marianne had spent years ignoring. A system held together by habit, not compliance. The thing about systems. People think power is loud. It isn't. Power lives in systems so boring no one checks them, until someone does. Elena knew this. She'd lived inside those systems. She knew where people stopped paying attention. And she knew exactly where Marianne had cut corners because nothing bad had happened yet. The first crack. The city inspection didn't arrive dramatically. No sirens. No warnings. Just 2 officials with clipboards and polite voices. They referenced Elena's firm casually. Routine cross-verification. Marianne forced a smile. Of course. Inside, something tightened. Employees start talking. Not to the press. Not to authorities. To each other. Whispers in elevators. Questions during lunch. Nervous glances at fire exits. Someone said, did you know our last safety drill was 3 years ago? Another replied, I thought we had one last winter. No one could find proof. Because Elena had quietly shown inspectors where proof was supposed to be. The illusion of control slips. Marianne called her legal team. They assured her. Nothing here is criminal. She felt relieved, briefly. Then the lead attorney added. But it's fragile. Fragile systems don't collapse immediately. They leak. And leaks attract attention. The consultant's silence. Elena said nothing publicly. No smug looks. No messages. No satisfaction displayed. Revenge didn't need applause. She worked. Every night, she reviewed one more file. Not to hurt Marianne. To finish what had been ignored. The meeting Marianne feared. A board review. Marianne had chaired these meetings for years. This time, she sat on one side of the table. Not accused. Just questioned. Why was this risk never flagged before? Why is this compliance gap appearing now? Who managed operations previously? That last question hung in the air. Someone answered carefully. An employee who was let go last year. Silence followed. No one said Elena's name. They didn't need to. The building reacts. Insurance premiums adjusted upward. Vendors demanded clearer contracts. One tenant requested early termination, just precautionary. Nothing dramatic. But momentum shifted. The building no longer felt invincible. Marianne finally speaks to Elena. Not officially. Not professionally. She cornered her in a hallway during a walkthrough. Is this about you getting fired? Elena met her gaze calmly. No. That scared Marianne more than anger would have. Then why? Elena replied simply. Because systems should work, even without mercy. Then she walked away. The truth Marianne couldn't escape. This wasn't revenge fueled by emotion. It was accountability delivered by competence. Elena hadn't attacked Marianne. She had removed negligence's camouflage. The quietest victory. Weeks later, the firm closed the audit. Recommendations were issued. Corrections mandated. Reputation bruised, not destroyed. Marianne kept the building. But she lost something else. The illusion that power protects you from consequences. Elena's life moves forward. She didn't stay at the consulting firm forever. She learned. Then built. Her reputation grew, not loudly but steadily. People trusted her with systems they couldn't afford to have fail. The final shift, when roles reverse completely. Power doesn't disappear. It transfers. A year later. A Vale Tower still stood. From the outside, nothing looked different. Same glass. Same height. Same name engraved at the entrance. But inside? Everything had changed. Marianne's new reality. Marianne still owned the building. But ownership and control are not the same thing. Every decision now required approval. Every system needed documentation. Every shortcut had been sealed. The board no longer trusted instinct. They trusted process. And process had a memory. Respect replaced fear. Her employees no longer feared Marianne. They complied with her. That difference cut deeper. Fear obeys quickly. Respect obeys correctly. Marianne felt it in meetings. When she spoke, people listened. But they verified. The invitation. Elena received an unexpected email. Subject. Advisory role, independent systems review. Different sender. Different company. One Marianne couldn't influence. The irony wasn't lost on Elena. She didn't rush to reply. What Elena had become. In 1 year, Elena had done something quietly rare. She had become difficult to replace. Not because of personality. Not because of connections. Because she understood systems most people ignored. Risk. Process. Human behavior inside structure. She wasn't loud. She was precise. The meeting. Elena walked into the conference room calmly. Marianne was already seated. No cornering. No confrontation. Just a table. Equal chairs. Neutral ground. Marianne spoke first. I didn't understand your value when you worked for me.
Elena listened.
No satisfaction crossed her face. Marianne continued. I thought loyalty was obedience. She paused. I was wrong. The line that ended everything.
Elena responded quietly.
You didn't fire me because I failed. You fired me because I made failure visible. That was the truth. And truth has weight. The offer. The proposal was generous. Consulting fees. Authority. Autonomy. But Elena asked one question. Will recommendations be optional or mandatory? Marianne answered honestly. Mandatory.
Elena nodded.
Then I'll consider it. Why this was the real revenge. Revenge is often imagined as destruction. But Elena chose something sharper. She became necessary. Marianne now depended on the very competence she once dismissed. And not emotionally. Structurally. The final lesson. Elena accepted the role, on her terms. And not as an employee. And not as someone seeking validation. But as an external force that corrected systems. She never spoke about being fired. She never explained the past. Her work spoke for her. Marianne's quiet loss. Marianne learned a brutal truth too late. You can remove people. You cannot remove consequences. The people who truly matter in an organization are often invisible. Until they're gone. The ending that matters. Elena didn't ruin Marianne. She refined her. She didn't burn the building. She strengthened it. And in doing so, she proved the ultimate form of revenge. Outgrowing the person who underestimated you. Final line, the closure. Some people seek revenge to feel powerful. Others become powerful. And let reality handle the rest.